Oh, wow.
That was just weird.
Saw it twice, so I was like, oh my god.
Oh, it's just disappeared.
It makes sense just the way it seemed to disappear like a wild animal that didn't want to be seen.
And the speed that it retracted, it's almost sounds like a vacuum that's just literally just gone.
You can just imagine it was being sucked back into a tube.
It's the physicality as well, though. In the right circumstances, this thing could reach out and touch a person. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Truth Proof. And we've got another interesting story connected to the Greenman to talk about today. And you may remember Mark several weeks ago coming on and sharing his rather frightening encounter with something that people come to call the Greenman. Well, since that video that went out, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks ago, a few people have come forward and given me their own experiences and sightings of the Greenman. So today I'm going to bring on Nick, who's going to share his own sighting, be it a brief one from 2007. So I'll not labour on this. I'll bring Nick in and let's let him share this account with us. Hello, Nick. How are you doing?
Good, thanks, Paul. Good to see you.
Excellent. And I can't believe how much people have sort of latched onto Mark's story of the Greenman and how interested people seem to have been in it. You know, it almost makes me wonder if this is the original cryptid, the original sort of man of the woods, so to speak, because people talk about Bigfoot and all that type of phenomena in woodland and in forests all over the world.
Yeah.
What we don't realize is that the Greenman's been there, at least in European documented history, for hundreds and hundreds of years, depicted in church carvings and all sorts of stonework. And when you listen to the account that Mark shared, probably, I don't know, whatever, like 3-4 weeks ago, what were your views? Did it just instantly spark the sighting of your own? Did you think, I've got to contact Paul and I want to share this, or were you a bit reserved at first?
It did, yeah. I was excited because somehow the algorithm worked in my favor and the thumbnail for your video came up. And immediately when I saw that, I was like, wow, got to watch this. So dropped everything, watched it. In some ways, it is very, very similar. And there are a few details that are very different about Mark's experience. But yeah, very, very similar.
Yeah, because your experience, obviously, Mark's, if he were frightened, but I suppose we've got to understand he was a 6-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And your experience, obviously, you're a lot older. What year are we going back to?
So it's 2007. I must have been about 28.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I didn't find the experience frightening. In fact, there was one of your videos recently. I think it was a live stream, and one of your guests was talking about seeing strange things in the sky. And then when they got home, they had this kind of poltergeist type activity happening in their home. The towel was lifting in front of him when he was in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And his comment, that really chimed with me, because he said, I thought that if something like that happened in front of me, I would have been terrified. I would have run out the bathroom screaming. But then you just simply watch it, you're a bit bemused, and you accept it.
And then I had some hitchhiker stuff that had followed me home in the months following. Yeah, that I was telling the guys about. Yeah, just odd things. The first was a floating voice that said hello. I've never had anything like that in my life, but it wasn't unpleasant. It just happened, and I sort of, instead of jumping out of my skin, I was just like, all right, yeah.
Weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Weird.
And then it gets a bit more bizarre.
And that's how I felt when I saw this thing I'm going to tell you about.
Well, obviously we'll jump into that, but just before we do, because it seems a perfect opportunity, and I think I know answer anyway. Did anything happen after the sighting of the Green Man? Did anything happen after your sighting of the Green Man? Anything paranormal or strange in the home?
Nothing immediately afterwards. No, I had a few interesting little things happen in the flat I was living at the time, but the big thing I can remember, that must have been about 10 years afterwards. So
it's not really connected. Not connected.
Not connected. No,
No,
I had no dreams or nightmares about this thing at all.
So, if you would, then Nick, could you just walk us into this? What you were doing that morning, how you came to see this thing, and you've actually done an image that we'll be able to show, hopefully, of what it was you saw, because you paint a brilliant picture. I've already heard the story, and with your words you've painted a picture, so I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, so this was 2007. It was definitely summertime. I can't remember which month, and I was on what was then a Southwest train carriage, and I was heading to Kingston. So New Malden is a couple of stops away from Kingston, and I was sitting on a chair that looked out the window at the opposite platform that goes to London Waterloo. And the train had been, like it often does at that station, it was idling for too long. And I ended up gazing out the window. And that's when I suddenly saw this amazing thing. In the bushes and trees that line the platform, that behind a metal fence, about, I would say, 6 or 7 feet up, there was an enormous face that seemed to be made of the foliage of the trees and bushes that it was peering out from. It was like roughly disc shaped, and I could make out the eyes, the shadow of the nose, and a very large mouth. And I remember gasping when I saw it for the first time, thinking, that is incredible, because I knew it was my brain seeing a pattern in leaves, and that happens to us all the time when you look at clouds. And I just enjoyed the experience. I seem to remember sitting there smiling, watching it, watching this thing just seemingly gazing out at the opposite platform.
And it just looked like it just blended into the foliage. And at this time you're thinking pareidolia, maybe, I don't know.
That's it, yeah. And that word I now know. I didn't know at the time, but I knew the concept, if you like. And the face seemed to have a dark fringe around it of shadows. So that's what gave it this disc-like appearance.
Well, just before you carry on, you sent me the picture just before we started this interview. Would you mind? Is it okay to put that picture up?
Yeah.
And you can sort of talk us through that.
Sure.
Just describe how you've come to. Have you made this image yourself?
Yeah. So I used a little bit of Chat GPT and Photoshop, because it wasn't quite as I was remembering it when I saw the first version, but this is as close, I think, as I can get to it. The only difference is that the lines of the face, if you like, where the jowls were and around the eyes, the leaves seem to sort of form a pattern like radiating outwards.
So there was even more detail than what I think that's basically what you're saying.
Yeah, and I don't think I couldn't quite get the expression right. It looks a little bit too friendly in the picture. There was it's maybe something to do with the mouth. It was leering a bit more than that, but it's pretty damn close.
I've got to say, looking at that, it's incredible. If you'd have seen it and thought, I forgot what they call it. There's an art, isn't there, where they shape hedges and
topiary, yeah.
That's the word, and they sculpt them, don't they?
Yeah.
And for a moment, did you think somebody's done that? Somebody's created this?
that thought only came into my head a couple of days ago when I was thinking about this. I'd never thought of that before. That I should have looked at it and thought, oh, look at that amazing shape someone's cut into the leaves. It didn't occur to me at the time, but it could well have been that if it wasn't what happened next. Then yeah.
Well, we'll just pull you back into the room, so to speak. So the eyes, though, they're just big dark voids that you couldn't see an actual eye.
That's the difference to Mark's account that you spoke to a couple of weeks ago, where he saw like really vivid blue eyes.
Yeah. You said you saw the leaves, the eyes. What colour were the eyes?
They were blue. They were blue.
And were they white around where the?
No, I just saw the blue. You know, like we got whites. Where I just saw blue. Yeah, like the whole thing was blue.
That's amazing, and that's an important part, I feel, for your experience for our listeners and anybody listening to it beyond Truth Proof, because there's so many elements of it. I said originally, could it have been a man in a ghillie suit? And you, quite honestly, you said could have been. But then as we dig deeper into it and get below these layers, we realize that the eyes are totally opposite to what you would expect a human eye to look like.
They were striking. They weren't like they were real vivid.
Yeah,
vivid blue.
And so you didn't get that sense of life or liveliness in what I saw, but there was a point at which I felt all of a sudden that it'd seen me, and that's when the next thing happened, which made this truly strange.
So what happened? We're all waiting.
Yeah. So I'm watching this, enjoying it and being amazed by it. And then there came across me that feeling all of a sudden that it's seen me. And if I try and show you with my hands, if this were the bushes and this was the face, all of a sudden the face went whoomp back. And it happened so quickly, but it was a motion as if it were being sucked backwards, or it had just decided that I don't want to be seen, and it scrammed. And the moment this face had withdrawn, and it was big, of course, had this incredible effect. So all the bushes and the trees around it were shaking violently, and there was a branch underneath what, if you like, was the chin of the face that I hadn't noticed. And that, when the face was drawn backwards, it went smack into the foliage, and that caused more agitation in the foliage.
So there's something physical there. It can't be denied. I imagine, Nick, if the train had have just slowly pulled away and that hadn't have happened, you'd have gone through the rest of your life, if ever this came into your mind, thinking that were an unusual sight on that station platform.
Yeah, and I in fact think I probably would have forgotten about it had it not been for the way it was sucked backwards. Otherwise, it would just have been, oh, amazing. That's a natural thing that's happened, and it will probably get disturbed and it will disappear. But it's the way that it exited that was the really, really uncanny thing.
And when you got that initial feeling that, oh my God, it realizes it's being seen, do you think it, and we know we'll never know this, was alarmed of being seen?
That's me perhaps imposing my own ideas on it. I think that feels logical, but you know, when you hear other people's weird supernatural experiences, so sometimes they really emphasize how they just knew these things, and I just didn't feel like I really understood much about what was happening. And like, it makes sense just the way it seemed to disappear, like a wild animal that didn't want to be seen. It just ducks out of sight. So it feels like that would be a rational thing to think about, although this is completely irrational.
the speed that it retracted, it's almost sounds like a vacuum that's just literally just gone.
You can just imagine it was being sucked back into a tube behind it.
So, which leads me to question then, and once again, I have no idea. What do you think these things are?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? Like you said at the start, if you look at folklore, and there's stories about the wood woes, and there's stories about the great god Pan, all of these woodland entities that have been knocking around since before Christianity, and they're part of our culture, and they're there in the background, I think, for most of the time. But then they suddenly erupt into the world in front of you like this. And the strangest thing for me really is like, well, of all the places on the planet, why on earth would it be the fairly humdrum station like New Malden and a scrappy little bank of trees along the platform at that? You know, there's Richmond Park round the corner. And if you thought you were going to see the Green Man, I bumped into a woman when I was doing a walk through the park when I was a school teacher, and this very eccentric woman came up and started talking to me as I'm standing there at a marshalling point or something, and it didn't take her long before she started insisting to me that the spirit of Richmond Park lives by one of the Sheen Gate. And she was saying, you've got to go to that, like go to it later today. He's there. You'll find him if you look for him. And the woman came across as like very eccentric as being polite. But it's like that makes sense. That makes sense. It's like in a strange way, she was finding something like the Green Man or the spirit of the forest in the right kind of place.
And you'd obviously had that experience then, yeah?
Yeah.
So were there parts of you that obviously probably not the right time and place to speak about that to this lady, but was there a part of you afterwards, or maybe during that conversation, that you wanted to share what you'd seen?
Not really, no.
Fair enough.
She had a dog. She was about to walk off. I had to look after kids and things like that. So I thought it was interesting, and I always thought, I must go and have a look at that part.
So after you'd seen this, then Nick, and obviously in the days, weeks, even years that followed, have you been on that platform and looked at that hedgerow and then looked behind it?
I have travelled through it loads. Only once, when there happened to be some issue with the train, I remember getting out at that platform because I never normally would. And I thought, as I'm here, I'm going to have a look at where I thought I saw it. And it's part of the platform which is basically as far away from the steps to exit as possible. So you don't get many people there. There was no one there on the platform that day when I was looking out. And I did have a look, and absolutely nothing. Didn't see anything that might have explained, what I saw.
You see, you don't need convincing, because when we put this out, it'd be brilliant if someone came forward and said, I've had the exact same experience or something similar on that platform. It won't detract from your story or add to your story, but it's a little bit more validation, I suppose. But you don't need convincing. Once that retracted and there were all the movement, you knew there was something there, however highly unusual it was. You knew something was there. I'm curious. You said it was a big face, and from your image, we can see it's a big face. So I guess we think of a head, shoulders, or neck, shoulders, arms, and a torso to the Green Man based on the other stories, which kind of is impossible based on what you saw. So are we looking at something that can morph into other things? Once again, no right answer here. I realize that, but we're just looking at a face there. There couldn't have been a body beyond it unless it's embedded into the earth itself.
No sign of shoulders or arms or hands. it was strange. It was just a face.
Yeah.
It was as simple as that.
And there wasn't enough to contain a body below that anyway, was there? Because I mean, it took up the entire area, really, didn't it, Nick?
Yeah, like I say, 6 or 7 feet at most from ground level. There's a great big head.
When we spoke a week or so ago, although you've done your rendition and it's absolutely amazing, you said that there was a face that it resembled, and I forgot what that face was. If you could just fill us in on that, and I'll see if I can. If I can't get an image, I'll do a sketch of that myself.
Yeah, it's called the Mouth of Truth in Rome. And it's the Santa Maria Cosmedin Church. There's a portico outside, and everyone knows it because there's a half-mile queue of people queuing up to see the Mouth of Truth. And the thing is that you're meant to put your hand inside its mouth, and it will bite off your hand if you're a liar. So everyone's queuing up to get their photos and larking about with it. But the strange thing is, apparently it's the image. Again, it's disc-shaped and it's very big. It's the image of Oceanus, who was the water or sea god, depending on what you read. So it's about as far away as you can get from the earth and trees. But that, for some reason, because I've seen loads and loads of pictures of the Green Man over the years, something about the look of the face of this thing, that's pretty much it. And there's something about the blankness of its look, but there's an intensity about it as well. That if people look at that picture, they'll get a sense of the expression on the face of the eye.
Right. Well, we'll have to get that and show that so that they can get a sense of what you're putting over, because although the image that you've created gives us a size and a perspective and the eyes, you did say there was something not quite right. You couldn't get the mouth quite right, but you got the feeling of it after looking at the Mouth of Truth, which is a fabulous thing. If you got chance to ever see something like this again, would you welcome looking at something like that again?
Yeah, I would. I mean, it always comes with a little feeling of anxiety, doesn't it? Like, if I saw it again, would it be quite so nice? Or because it didn't frighten me. It unnerved me after it had happened, but I do think I'd be happy to see it again if it were under sort of similar circumstances.
That's amazing. And you just as a experience, would you welcome it then if anybody come forward? Would you want me to put you in touch with them?
Yeah, I'd love that. It's such an interesting thing, and it's such a puzzle. And I know in my heart of hearts, I'm probably going to get no answers about this for the rest of my life. But if someone somehow had a similar experience, even if it was at another railway station, that would be interesting. In fact, someone in the comments to Mark's video was talking about my account, and they asked quite a good question. They said, was there any kind of atmosphere? Like, do you feel like you were daydreaming or anything like that? Was there a shift in the atmosphere as you were looking at this thing? And the answer is no. There was nothing. I was lost in thought for a while, but when I saw this thing, it interested me. But there was no sense of threat or menace.
No.
That overcame me. So it just, and I said to the commenter that the only atmosphere, if you like, that there was just one that you get in all of these kind of liminal places like train stations. They're just places for passing through, transient spaces, and it's like you're not meant to linger there. You're not meant to set up home there. They're just a place to travel through. So they've just got that subtly uncomfortable atmosphere of any liminal place like that.
You're kind of welcome there because that you've got to do it, and that's a specific task. But in a way, it could never feel comfortable or like saying like home is a ridiculous thing to say, but you know what I'm going. It's not an environment where you would sit like in a nice park and enjoy the scenery and sit with friends and have maybe a picnic or whatever. This is just a place just to pass through. One last thing then, Nick. Your life at that time when you saw this, and I'm only asking and pitching it in the direction of, could you have seen this as a message to you for some? Was there anything specific taking place in your life at that time?
Yeah, the only thing that comes to mind is how I at that point I've been living in a succession of flats, and I would go on living in flats for a long time after that. And I'm living in a home now with a garden, and I'm a mad keen gardener. I love it, and I love being out amongst nature. I love plants and trees and flowers. And at that point in my life, you know, I was pretty fed up living in that stuffy little flat, and I had my house plants there. And in a way, I do sort of, this might again be me imposing meaning on it, but it almost felt, if I were to interpret a message, that it might be that it's simply saying that I'm here, and you can find me wherever you want me. It doesn't matter, big or small. You find me in unexpected places, and if I look at it like that, that's quite comforting. But I really emphasize that that's not something I felt at the time, but that's me years later put meaning on it.
The mouth of truth looked quite cold and unwelcoming.
It's those small little round eyes and that gaping mouth. It's creepy. If you were on your own late at night, then it would stop being fun, like shoving your hand in the mouth and having a laugh. It's like, there's something odd about it, but not in the way that I saw it, where there's just so many people having fun around it.
It's the physicality as well, though, isn't it? You know, the actual fact that when it were retracted, everything moved. So there's a physical there, and I don't want to put a scary element on it, but it's almost as though in the right circumstances, this thing could reach out and touch a person. And I don't mean hurt a person, just reach out and touch if it can create movement on a tree.
Yeah, that's the thing that kind of blew my mind in the moment, was like, oh my God, I'm not seeing what I thought I was seeing. And there was hardly any time to think about it before the train suddenly decides, like, let's get going, and we're off. And I just sat back in the chair thinking, that is just mad. I can't quite sort of work out what I've just seen. And it's like, I think, like I said to you last time, it's the sort of thing that if you had a Hollywood budget, you could achieve.
Yeah.
But I would have seen like film cameras, and like, why would they be doing that on New Malden Station? It's like there was no one there.
There'd have been a film crew. There'd have been a film crew, wouldn't there? There'd have been people. Yeah.
And I would have seen that, but it was a really quiet summer's day for whatever reason, and there was no one filming there. There was no one setting up special effects, and there isn't much. And the other thing is, there's not much room for it to be drawn back into, because that bank of trees is only about 10 feet wide, probably.
Yeah, I suppose there's loads of ways we can look at that. What you talked about, you know, you suddenly got the feeling of, oh, I've been seen, or he can see me, and it retracts. Or it could be, I want to show Nick that I am real. This isn't pareidolia. There is a reality to me, so I'm going to do this. The true essence of it all is that you had an incredible, not a life-changing experience, but an incredible experience back in 2007, and one that will probably never replicate again.
No, that's the sad thing. I mean, I do enjoy it when the funny supernatural stuff happens to me, but it seems to be getting, or the gaps between them seem to be getting longer and longer these days. There was a point where it was like every year, around about the 12-month mark, something would happen, but there's been nothing. And I think maybe it's something to do with this house. It feels there's no atmosphere here. It's got or like a bad atmosphere. It's just got a the only way I can describe it is very sort of clean and clear.
Yeah, I can understand that, because if we don't know what these things are, but what you encountered, in my mind, what I'm taking from is you actually saw and experienced the true essence of nature, or a nature spirit. Maybe I'm being a bit too flowery, pardon the pun, when I say that, but for something to become the shape of foliage but take on the form of a face, or in other people's encounters take on the form of a man, but a man of nature, is an incredible thing. And maybe that's just nature itself, and showing us how incredible this world is and the things that are out there waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, that's right. And that, on a little side note as well, was that feeling I had that you're looking at something male. There was nothing feminine about it at all. And what made me think that or feel that, I can't be sure, but it just had a face. It's not like the face actually looked either male or female, but it just had a kind of masculine feeling around it somehow.
That's an interesting one in itself, isn't it? It felt as though there was some kind of male vibe coming from this thing, because I don't think I've heard stories about the green woman. It's always the green man.
No. And they often are, like when you look at carvings that you'll see in churches, they are sort of fairly androgynous looking. So if they're going to be male or female more explicitly, then they look male, don't they? You never really see a like notably feminine looking one. But that's the only other link I can make to other versions of the Green Man, that this one just seemed again quite male-like.
Nick, all I can say is thank you very much for sharing that. It really, I don't know, incredible story. It really is something that probably took from start to finish, 5 or 6 seconds? I don't know.
Yeah, something like that.
But your retelling of it has painted a wonderful picture. So from myself and everybody who listens to this, I'd like to say thank you.
Thank you for letting me talk about it. It's been great.
You're welcome.
Oh, wow.
That was just weird.
Saw it twice, so I was like, oh my god.